Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels Origins gameplay. Today I'm very excited to be bringing you the blue-red Thopters deck, which is an artifact-based deck with a lot of interesting synergies. And starting at our 1-drop, we have Fiery Impulse, a single red to deal 2 damage to target creature, and with Spell Mastery we get to deal 3 damage instead, so nice and efficient. Then in our 2-drop slot we have a few artifact creatures. One of them is Runed Servitor, just a 2/2 for 2 mana, and when he dies each player draws a card, which is neither really an upside nor a downside, but it's nice to have a 2-power artifact creature to get things started. And he gets the nod over Perilous Myr, since having 2 power is more important in a deck that's trying to attack, while Perilous Myr is a more defensive card, but still nice to have a copy. Then we also have Twin Bolt as another cheap removal spell that also synergizes with one of the cards we'll get to in just a bit. Then Chief of the Foundry is probably one of the more important creatures in the deck, as he gives all other artifact creatures you control +1/+1, which gets very scary once you have a few Thopter tokens in play. Another important creature in this deck is Thopter Engineer, a 1/3 that generates a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and more importantly, all artifact creatures you control have haste, which makes all future Thopter generators that much more scary, and of course also works with our 2-drop artifact creatures or Chief of the Foundry. Then we have another 3-drop Thopter generator, which is Ghirapur Gearcrafter, which is the worst version of Thopter Engineer. So this one's a 1/3, this one's a 2/1. They both make Thopter tokens, but the Gearcrafter does not grant anything haste. But it's still nice to have a critical mass of Thopter generators, so I'm definitely playing all 4 copies. Then we also have Artificer's Epiphany for some card draw, and we get to draw 2 and discard 1 unless we control an artifact, in which case we just get to draw 2 at instant speed for just 3 mana, which is quite nice. Then in our 4 drops we have a Whirler Rogue. For 4 mana we get a 2/2 and also 2 Thopter tokens, and Whirler Rogue also has the ability to tap 2 untapped artifacts to grant something unblockable until end of turn. So this may seem like a weird ability, but it actually synergizes very nicely with one of our cards that we'll get to in just a second. Then we also have Pia and Kiran Nalaar, which is the red version of Whirler Rogue, so also a 2/2 that makes 2 Thopters, and the ability here is 2 and a red, sacrifice an artifact to deal 2 damage to target creature or player, so nice to finish off a player or a creature. But they are legendary, so you can only have one of them in play, even though they'll still make the Thopter tokens, of course. Then our final 4-drop creature is a Reclusive Artificer, a 2/3 haste that when she enters a battlefield deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to target creature, so can only be targeting creatures and not players. So I decided to only run 2 copies of the Artificer since we already have quite a few 4-drops, and I think this is the weakest one, but still quite nice. Then our final 4-drop is an enchantment, Thopter Spy Network, which gives us a lot of card advantage. And at the beginning of your upkeep you get to put a 1/1 Thopter token into play if you control another artifact, and when an artifact creature you control deals damage to a player, or other combat damage, we get to draw a card, so 1 card in total, so not 1 card for every artifact that dealt damage, and being able to keep generating Thopter tokens every turn is also quite nice. Then we get to the spicy part of the deck, which is a Willbreaker. Just a 2/3 for 5 mana, which seems pretty bad, but her ability is quite powerful, because whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability that we control, we get to just gain control of that creature for as long as we control Willbreaker. So the obvious synergy here is with Whirler Rogue, as we get to tap 2 of our artifacts to target something and give it unblockable. But we can also target the opponent's creatures with this ability, so by just tapping 2 artifacts, we get to just steal a creature an opponent controls with the Willbreaker in play. And it also works very nicely with cards like Twin Bolt, as we get to deal 2 damage divided among 2 creatures. So we get to gain control of 2 different creatures for as long as, of course, we don't kill them with Twin Bolt. And the same goes with Fiery Impulse. As long as we don't kill the creature, we get to gain control of it. And I guess Perilous Myr works as well. And finally, we can also use Pia and Kiran to target something. And a Reclusive Artificer also targets creatures. So all abilities to target stuff. So with a Willbreaker in play, you can start stealing all the opponent's creatures, and if they don't kill the Willbreaker, that's pretty much a game over. Then for the mana base, I've decided not to run the land that generates the Thopter tokens, since our mana base is pretty difficult to achieve here with double red and double blue, all needed at 4. So I decided to just run 9 islands and 9 mountains, and then 2 Sulfur Falls and 4 Izzet Guildgate to make sure that we hit that double blue and double red consistently. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how we do. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks pretty awesome. We have a tap land into Impulse and Twin Bolt, into Foundry, into Rogue. So looks pretty good. Opponent has a turn 1 mountain, but no 1-drop. Let's play our Guildgate, pass the turn. There's a Foundry Street Denizen into nothing, so must have drawn the Denizen this turn. Alright. Huh. Another Guildgate is interesting. Yeah, I think I like playing the Guildgate here and leaving up Impulse rather than playing the island and leaving up Twin Bolt, as this is a little more mana efficient. Call of the Full Moon and kill this in response. Get us a nice 2-for-1. And now we get to play our Chief. And next turn follow it up with Whirler Rogue. Unless we really have to use this Twin Bolt. The toughness on the Chief of the Foundry is also nice, since Impulse and Twin Bolt don't kill it. Alright. Let's start by attacking. Opponent takes it. And play Whirler Rogue. Opponent likely has removal for Thopter or the Rogue itself. Let's see what he kills. Decides to kill, alright, Chief. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So gets to kill the Chief and one of the Thopters. If our opponent had an additional instant in the graveyard, he could have impulsed the Chief and then killed both Thopters, but our opponent did not. So we're left with a Rogue and a single Thopter. Here I don't hate casting this in case we find something we want to play. Alright, let's attack. Keep up Twin Bolt. And Disenchantment, I'm not sure how good it is in a mono red deck, since there's not a ton of good enter the battlefield abilities. So it might just be to deal additional damage, but yeah, right now it's done 0 damage for 4 mana. Alright, Perilous Myr is not bad, but I'm certainly not gonna kill it here, so... Attacks for 1. And... now the Myr gets exiled, so it doesn't even get its death trigger. And here I like playing our chief. We can also play our Gearcrafter and make our rogue unblockable, or we can leave up 2 removal spells. I think I like being more proactive here. And make our rogue unblockable, tapping these 2 artifacts. Attack for 4. And now our opponent's at 11, we have 4 burn in hand. Alright, a Flamekin. Dies to our Fiery Impulse and Twin Bolt. Gets in for 2. Not blocking. Alright. Another Twin Bolt. So we can cast all 3 Twin Bolts. That's 6 damage. Attack with everyone. And opponent takes at least another 6. So yeah, our opponent's just dead here. But yeah, our opponent didn't even block with the Flamekin. And Twin Bolt will get the job done. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which has no blue sources in it, but that's actually fine since we have 4 cards we can cast without blue sources. We're on the draw, we have early plays, so I think this is a keeper. Opponent on green mana. And here, let's play Mountain. Drew a Fiery Impulse we can play maybe. I'm not sure what creature we want to lead with, if it's Runed Servitor or Perilous Myr. Meanwhile, our opponent plays the Evolutionary Leap, so a very grindy card that's gonna give him a big advantage in the late game. So I think we want to start by being the most aggressive we can be, so play our 2-power creature instead of our 1-power creature. And pass the turn. Our opponent likely has a 2-drop and can keep up a green mana for the leap. Nope, instead it's a Jagged Scar Archer, which is just a 1/1. So we can consider killing it now, since if our opponent plays an elf next turn, he could tap this to maybe kill the Thopter we generate from the Engineer. So we certainly don't want to lead with the Engineer here, even though the haste would be nice to have in play. So we do have a few options here. We can just Fiery Impulse the archers and play Perilous Myr, or we can just play Chief of the Foundry and be pleased with that. Another card I want to play around here is the 2-drop elf that generates a elf warrior token if you have another elf in play. So that's also a reason to kill the Jagged Scar archers right now. So let's start by attacking here. Maybe your opponent blocks, I don't know. Our opponent takes it, and yeah, I'm just gonna take out the archers here and play the Perilous Myr. And then next turn we can maybe play the Engineer or the Chief. Both are pretty strong plays. Our opponent, there we go, has Dwinnen's Elite, which is a card I did not want to see with the archers in play. So now it's just a 2-2. Now we can again decide to kill this, but now our opponent has the evolutionary leap up. So our opponent could just sacrifice the creature in response. So I think here it's between playing the Engineer and playing the Chief. And given that playing the Chief means our Myr just trades with the Elite, I think we play the Chief here. And go to combat, attack for 5. For opponent blocks the Myr, that's great, we still get to deal 2 damage to our opponent. And our opponent is gonna play a Fog, alright. I love seeing my opponent cast a Fog. So prevents all combat damage this turn. But we still have a better board state. Well, never mind. Their opponent kills our Chief. But we still have a 1-1 and a 2-2 over our opponent's 2-2, and our opponent only has 2 cards left in hand. So now we get to play our Engineer and smash for 4. Yep. And then next turn, if we're lucky and draw a blue source, we play a Whirler Rogue, otherwise probably the Gearcrafter. And our opponent being mono green means we don't really have to worry about a sweeper effect. There's a Jagged Scar Archers, which we probably do want to kill since it can start mowing down our Thopter tokens. We draw another red source here. Try and kill this. See if our opponent has maybe a pump spell for single green. Or is gonna sacrifice it to the leap, and that's also fine. Opponent reveals the Huntmaster. That's fine. And now we get to attack with everyone. Opponent trades. See if we hit a spell we can cast here. Well, it's a land. So yeah, that's probably a reason not to play our mountain there. It's definitely a mistake. Opponent plays the Huntmaster. Did not leave green mana up for the evolutionary leap, so we've got that going for us. Alright, so had we played correctly, we could play the Whirler Rogue now. Instead, we can only play a Gearcrafter, which is still fine. And we get to attack with everyone except our Engineer. Next turn our opponent could use this to make 2 blockers, but that's fine. Alright, there's an elf. Our opponent can get an elf warrior token, which also gets pumped by Dwinnen, which can also start gaining our opponent some life, which is not really what we want since we're trying to race here. So if we're lucky, we can draw our combo with Whirler Rogue and Willbreaker, but Chief of the Foundry is actually not a bad draw here. So let's see. Dwinnen does have reach, which means she can eat our Thopter tokens. So if we play Whirler Rogue, we can tap 2 tokens to make something unblockable. So we could attack with the Gearcrafter. I think I'm just gonna play the Whirler Rogue here. Yeah, I think we just make this one unblockable, tapping these 2. And attack with only the Gearcrafter. And then next turn we can play the Chief and smash with everyone. And our opponent also doesn't have great attacks if he wants to attack with Dwynnon, for example. Alright, down goes Whirler Rogue. No attacks from the opponent. We draw Pia and Kiran. So let's see. If we play Pia and Kiran and attack with everyone, our opponent should be dead. Could also play the Chief. Yeah, let's play these. So yeah, if our opponent has a fog, he can survive. But then we can just win next turn. So attack with these. And this one. And yeah, our opponent did not have another fog. And just dies to Perilous Myr. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's see. Yeah, single blue is not gonna cut it here, so let's try another one. This hand is quite strong. We have a few early removal spells here, and then Engineer into Gearcrafter. So let's see what our opponent's playing. Sunblade Elf, that's just going to get Fiery Impulse right away. We could be patient and try and get a 2-for-1 with Twin Bolt here, but I don't want to mess around in case our opponent has pump spells. So let's just pause the turn here. If our opponent is green-white here, then Twin Bolt can likely kill our opponent's 2-drop here. If our opponent's on an elf deck, then we can maybe get a 2-for-1 with Twin Bolt. But yeah, looks like a more classic green-white Renown deck. And let's see, we could Twin Bolt here, but actually I don't think we have to, since this is not a problem by itself. We want to kill the Renown creatures with Twin Bolt rather than the Renown Enabler. So here we can play the Engineer, attack with our Thopter, and then next turn we can see if we want to keep up Twin Bolts or play the Gearcrafter. And who knows, maybe our opponent plays another 1 toughness creature that we can also Twin Bolt. 3 mana. Nimbus Wings. Well, that's a reason, I guess, to use the Twin Bolt last turn. So here, let's see. I don't really want to double Twin Bolt this. So I think I will play Runed Servitor and attack with both the Servitor, the Engineer and the Thopter. And if our opponent blocks, we get to Twin Bolt. And if he doesn't block, then so be it. We just have to hope this doesn't get too large with another enchantment. But I really don't want to use 2 Twin Bolts on this. Opponent blocks the Engineer and has a Primal Bellow. Alright, I guess that will work. Our opponent gets to pump this. has 2 forests, so there's no point in using Twin Bolt. A risky play from the opponent, but it does pay off here as he gets to kill our engineer. And the 1 damage is not enough to finish off the Anointer. A Reclamation Sage. Yeah, that hurts. Gets to kill one of our artifacts. But we both get to draw a card. And end step here, we can kill the Sage and deal 1 to our opponent. Fiery Impulse. We do have 2 instants in our graveyard, so this deals 3, and this is 3 toughness. So let's see. I don't think our opponent has another pump spell, or he could have used it to save the Reclamation Sage. So let's lead with casting a Fiery Impulse here. Alright, that works. And now I like playing the Gearcrafter. And we can attack for 1. It's too bad that we lost our engineer, but we can refuel with the Epiphany here. And we have 1 more removal spell left. Well, we can't target the hexproof Hunt Beast, so we're gonna have to try and race it. And Pia and Kiran is a great way to try and do that. So let's attack for 2 in the air. And play Pia and Kiran. And we're still at 20, our opponent at 12. There are no enchantments that give lifelink as far as I'm aware of. Our opponent is going to have a hard time stopping all these Thopter tokens. An attack for 3, we could double block here, but I'm not really interested in doing that. Another Gearcrafter is nice. So let's attack for 4. And we could cast our Epiphany here, but I think just playing the Gearcrafter is better. And I'll leave up a red mana. So let's see, our opponent only has 1 planes, so Archangel of Tithes is not even an answer. Solemn Offering will gain our opponent 4 life. But I don't think our opponent is winning this race anytime soon. Let's go ahead and cast our Epiphany, leaving up a red mana to draw 2. Alright, there's a Guildgate we could play. Could also just play Island, keep up Twin Bolt. But yeah, we're not killing our opponent this turn, so don't need to activate Pia and Kiran yet, don't need to make an all-out attack. Just send in our Thopters. And I think we do just play the Guildgate, pass the turn. Alright. Kithian's Tactics. Alright. That's 10 damage. Our opponent could have 1 more pump spell here, but then we only take 13 or 14. Drop to 13, attack with everyone, and our opponent should be dead. So I really don't see a reason to block here. So now we get to, let's see, We can play Whirler Rogue, make stuff unblockable, but that doesn't really do much. I guess we can we could make Pia and Kiran unblockable, so our opponent doesn't get to eat that one. Let's see, we attack for 6, finish our opponent off with either Twin Bolt or a Pia and Kiran activation. I think just attacking with everyone is probably safer here, since we can still play the Whirler Rogue as a blocker. Our opponent blocks, and Twin Bolt our opponent, and that's gonna do it. Alright, now let's move on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look here. We are on the play and only 2 lands. Yeah, this hand is a little too slow. Let's try another one. Much better. And I think we lead with our Guildgate here. We don't get to cast this turn 1, but there's not many 1-drops in the format that I care about. And then we can just play Myr on 2 and Engineer on 3. Well, there's an Arsonist, but I'm not even sure we want to use a Fiery Impulse on an Arsonist when we have Twin Bolt in hand. And Runed Servitor is actually better than Perilous Myr here, since the Arsonist doesn't get to kill our Servitor. So let's play him. I'm not gonna block if our opponent attacks with the Arsonist, and hoping that our opponent plays another 1 toughness creature so we can Twin Bolt the Arsonist and whatever 2-drop our opponent has. And in red, most creatures have pretty low toughness. Instead it's a tap land and a passing of the turn. Alright, another Twin Bolt, but here I think I just like playing the Thopter Engineer and attack for 1 in the air. And pass a turn. Third land. And that's a Nantuko Husk. So he can sacrifice the Arsonist if he wants to take out our Thopter. Alright, let's see here. We can use both Twin Bolt and Fiery Impulse this turn. So what happens if we Fiery Impulse the Husk? Our opponent sacks the Arsonist, kills our Thopter, and our opponent still has a Husk in play. So we could attack first with just our Thopter, get in for 1 and then use our removal spells. Let's see, is there a way we can get in with our Runed Servitor? We can Twin Bolt, dealing 1 to the Arsonist, 1 to our opponent, then our opponent sacrifices in response, and in response we Fiery Impulse. Yeah, that might be better. Let's try that. Alright, our opponent just lets that happen. Takes down the Thopter. And Fiery Impulse this one. And attack. Another option there was just playing the Perilous Myr and attacking, which is also fine, but killing this is pretty important since it combos with Act of Treason effects to then steal our creatures and sacrifice them. Alright, a Rogue's Passage. So now if our opponent does have Act of Treason effects, they're not as great as with the Husk in play. Twin Bolt's fine. Both draw a card. So we don't have any artifacts in play for the Artificer here. So next turn probably just gonna play Myr and leave up Twin Bolt, unless we draw something. Alright, Epiphany. I think we'd still go for the Myr play here. Attack for 2. And hope our opponent plays a creature we can Twin Bolt. And then next turn we either play our Artificer or our Epiphany. Alright, another value land. And I'm not sure what our opponent showed there. Alright, it's gonna be a Read the Bones. So our opponent's gonna take some pain and draw 2 cards. Fiery Impulse on the Engineer, alright. Nothing else. Alright, so we could play our Spy Network here. Attack and draw a card. Probably better than playing the Epiphany here. And this also means our opponent is pretty much forced to kill our Myr on his turn, which is not a great value play. Alright, Whirler Rogue's perfect. Alright, 6 mana now, double black, so our opponent could have a Languish. Our opponent's just gonna make 2 1/1s, which we can Twin Bolt if we want to. Alright, let's see. We draw an Epiphany. So if we Epiphany here, we hope to hit an untapped land so we can also Twin Bolt. Otherwise we Twin Bolt and hope to hit a land with the 1 attack from Perilous Myr. Let's go with the safer play here, that's less greedy. Just Twin Bolt those. And draw our card. And hope to find a land. It's a tap land, unfortunately. Oh well. Alright, there's a Nightfire Giant, which is a 5/4. We get another Thopter here. Find a land. So the Artificer deals 3 damage right now, so can't quite kill the Giant. But we could just attack with everyone, hope our opponent blocks our Myr, and otherwise play Whirler Rogue or play the Epiphany. Either way, I think we start by attacking here. If our opponent has a Fiery Impulse, he maybe uses it on the Thopter. Alright, our opponent is going to block. Let's deal 2 damage here. Draw another land. And it's a little awkward that we play this post-combat, but it's still fine. And this also means that we still have an artifacts generator in case our opponent does have a Languish here. So we can get our Spy Network going again in case our opponent does kill off both our Thopters. Alright, it's gonna be a Winnower, which kills our Artificer. Alright, it's pretty good. We get another Thopter token, and Chief of the Foundry is a pretty nice draw here. So we can play both the Chief and the Whirler Rogue. think we play the chief first. Alright, resolves, and now we can attack. 4-4. And this is an interesting spot. If we play the Whirler Rogue and our opponent has a Languish, we do get kind of owned. So I think I'm gonna play it safe and keep up the Epiphany here. We are miles ahead on board. Opponent has to use this just to survive. And if we draw into a burn spell with the Epiphany, I think we just win. So if our opponent attacks with the Winnower, it probably means he has a Languish. So maybe we double block, but if he then has a spot removal spell for the chief, that's bad. Alright, it's just gonna kill it now. And does he attack? He does, since he can't block anyways. Or not blocking. And let's cast our Epiphany now. Draw 2. There's a Thopter Engineer, which should get the job done. Let's see here for a second. Yeah, play Thopter Engineer. Play Whirler Rogue. And that should do it. Continue. And smash. Alright, I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.